I averaged 9 points in Boston. I felt like I was robbing the people.
Today we're re-simulating the last 15 years of NBA history, but everybody stays in their prime and never becomes washed up. And it all starts off in the 2011 season where Shaquille O'Neal is back to MVP form. He's putting up 28 and 11 on the dot, and there's other Hall of Famers on the Celtics. But before we elaborate on how historically good this Celtics roster now is, we're just at the start of seeing familiar faces and peak performance in new places. NBA history is going to look extremely different. One of the best examples would be Shaq's Celtics, who dominate their way to a 72-win season to tie up the all-time record. With MVP Timberwolves Kevin Garnett as his running mate, the Celtics would fly past the first few rounds of the playoffs, including a victory over a Miami Heat team we'll cover in just a moment, for a finals matchup against the real-life champion Mavericks featuring MVP Dirk and a prime Jason Kidd. But in the face of the most dominant big man ever, surrounded by a ton of stars, it wouldn't matter at all. The Celtics would be winning the championship in 5. And with Shaq winning the Finals MVP, he now has 5 championships to his name, and in this universe, his time with the team is a story of triumph rather than a meme. But despite how dominant Boston is right now, it's about to get a whole lot harder in the 2012 season. For this experiment, rosters will remain historically accurate, and as a result, the Diesel is now officially retired. And that would be just enough for the Celtics to drop off to the point where they would be losing to the Chicago Bulls in the second round. The driving force being Derrick Rose, who's staying in MVP form and most importantly healthy. He's going to be one of the most influential faces of this experiment. But for now, if we're talking about MVPs, the actual winner for the 2012 season would be LeBron James, someone who's known for having the longest prime ever. But alongside him would be 2006 Finals MVP Dwayne Wade and Toronto Raptors Chris Bosh, pushing what was already an insane big three to the next level as they'd be adding themselves to the already tied up all-time win total with 72 as well, eventually heading all the way to the finals for a showdown with the Mavericks, who despite now adding a prime Vince Carter instead of an old one to the team, they'd still be thoroughly outmatched and eventually they would be losing this one in 6. The source of a lot of criticism towards LeBron no longer exists in this universe, and as we keep moving forward, how many rings will he win during his everlasting prime? Only time will tell, but for now we're shifting the focus out west for 2013 as a failed super team from real life would have their second chance. Kobe Bryant is back to 2006 prime form where he averaged 35 points per game. However, he won't have to score as much this time around as he's joined by MVP Steve Nash and Orlando Dwight Howard, making a team that was the 8th seed in real life, one worthy of 68 wins on the year. And that's a total that would only be bested by one team, Miami Heat, who are adding a prime Ray Allen, eventually meeting up with the Lakers in the finals. So here we go, the LeBron-Kobe matchup we did not get in real life. And with the Lakers set to break up the team in the near future, this is essentially Kobe's last shot to win a championship before he retires in 2016. So with that urgency in mind, despite Miami taking Game 1 at home, the Lakers would immediately respond and steal that home court advantage, winning Game 2 on the road. And they'd follow it up in Game 3 with a blowout to give themselves a series lead. However, while the last few moments were spent emphasizing how good the Lakers are, don't forget the Heat are boosted as well and the reigning champs, winning the next 2 to reclaim the lead and now push Kobe to his limits, in which he would break past. No longer is 2013 ending with an empty tank of gas and an injury that finished off his days as a dominant player, but he's 27 years old again and forcing Game 7. One that would be especially close in the final few minutes. With plenty of stars on both teams, a 3-point difference is basically nothing. And in a few short moments, we'll either see title number 6 for Kobe or title number 2 for LeBron and the Heat. They pass it right back to LeBron with about 7 seconds on the shot clock, gets the screen from Toronto Bosh, he pulls up for mid-range and hits it. It's a 5-point game. MVP Steve Nash walking it up. He passed it over to 2006 Kobe. He's driving into the paint. A lot of contact. It's batted around. Miami gets the stop. Wade with the defense. 3:02 left. Chalmers going coast to coast. Did he just try to dunk on Dwight? Dwight, who just won his 4th Defensive Player of the Year a couple years ago. Kobe misses the shot. D-Wade driving on the break. He's going to pull up over Nash. He misses one as well. All of a sudden, no team can score with 2.5 minutes left. Steve Nash about to get the screen from Dwight Howard. He's going to pass it over to Kobe in the corner. Kobe between the legs, the step back over Chalmers. It's good. It's a 3-point game. 2:18 on the clock, 20 seconds on the shot clock. Mario Chalmers trying to be a hero, blocked by Dwight again. It's stolen by Kobe. The bad pass from Chalmers, all the way, the windmill. Mario Chalmers, the 2K AI, he needs to give it up. LeBron with the ball. They clear out the left side for him. He's gonna drive middle, all the way with the dunk. He's doing the silencer going up the court. 1:46 left. He's gonna lob it over to Dwight, over to both Miami's big men. I was convinced that was going to get stolen. 9 out of 10 times, the 2K AI, it's going to steal that pass. 1:33 left. They throw it down to Wade in the post. Wade with the fadeaway over Bryant. It rattles in and out and back in. Both teams separated by just 3 with about 90 seconds, not even, less to play. Kobe's gonna drive middle into the paint. He dunks around Bosh. 1:14 left. D-Wade with the spin. He's gonna drive. Good defense by Kobe. Chris Anderson, the Birdman. He's gonna kick it over to LeBron at the top of the key. Still being guarded by Artest. Driving into the paint, he's fouled. LeBron made the first free throw, and the second to extend it to 3 is off. 95-97. 50 seconds left. They pass it down to Gasol. His first touch of clutch time. The stop by Bosh. The outlet to James. He's going to drive. He's going to get the step and dunk it with 42.7 remaining. And I just realized that Ray Allen is coming off the bench because D-Wade is starting at the 2. 38 seconds left. Kobe with the pull-up, keeping the Lakers in it. D-Wade trying to respond. 17 seconds. Crosses left into the post. Bullying his way into the paint, gets blocked by Kobe, gets his own rebound, gets 2 rebounds, puts it back up and in. D-Wade gets the rebound over Dwight. 21.5 left, LA calls a timeout. Kobe, I'm assuming he's about to take the shot. The in and out dribble over to Dwight. He smokes the layup. He makes the putback. LA going to need a steal or some missed free throws. They pass it into Wade. 2006 D-Wade, probably in the 70s. I would say mid-70s on the free throws, off the top of my head. First free throw's good. I could be completely wrong on that number, though. So he might miss this one. The second one is good. Ice in his veins. Los Angeles does not have any more timeouts. Going to have to go the length of the floor in a 2-possession game. They pass it over to Artest. 7 seconds on the clock. Nash with a pump fake. He's going to pull the 3 and hit it. It's a 1-point game with 4 seconds left. Steve Nash hits the clutch shot. They're going to foul Mario Chalmers. I mean, we saw it. He tried to take over the game, and it was a disaster, but he can redeem himself right here with a couple free throws. First one is in. Los Angeles does not have any timeouts. So regardless of what happens here, they have 3.5 left to tie up the game with the 3. Steve Nash from 3/4 court. And that one would be no good. It was a chaotic one, but Game 7 is ending with a Miami Heat title, giving them a repeat after winning a battle between 2 of the greatest teams in the history of the sport. You can very well say that the Heat just wanted it more. However, there's a silver lining for Kobe. He's the only player in the entire league who's been active for a 3-peat. And that's an achievement that may last for a while, as Miami's quest to do the same is getting a whole lot more difficult in 2014. The Eastern Conference would be adding a new rival, and that's the Brooklyn Nets, who have MVP Kevin Garnett, prime Deron Williams, prime Joe Johnson, Brook Lopez, who's in the middle of his prime, and another former Celtic in prime Paul Pierce. For the first time in a few years, there's a team in the Eastern Conference that can look eye to eye with the Heat, as they would finish with the same amount of wins and have the tiebreaker for the #1 seed. However, while most of the attention has been on teams that have gained a competitive advantage, the Golden State Warriors, a dynasty from real life, are going to deal with the opposite. For this experiment, older players specifically have been reverted back to their primes. But a young team like the Warriors don't get that same boost. They're still as good as usual, but the surrounding talent across the league has gotten much better. And as evidenced by their loss to the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, there's still plenty of work to do. With that said, now that we know that San Antonio is heading to the finals, we have to figure out their opponent, and it's either going to be Brooklyn or Miami. And with these 2 teams having identical records, only separated by a tiebreaker, it should be no surprise that this one would be going to Game 7. However, unlike last year's thriller between the Heat and the Lakers, this one will look much different. 3:02 left, LeBron makes the layup to cut it down to 30-something. And bad math skills aside, it's clear that this one is obviously ending with the Nets advancing to the finals. With this loss, LeBron's leaving Miami on a sour note, leaving both a prime D-Wade and Chris Bosh behind. With all that being said though, for now we have to crown a champion, and very easily the Brooklyn Nets would be taking care of the Spurs. After 5 relatively simple games, both Pierce and Garnett are tacking on an extra championships to their resume, And just like Celtics Shaq, Nets KG is now a story of success. With all that said though, while the last 4 years were pretty chaotic, the 2015 season would be pretty straightforward in comparison. LeBron James would quickly justify his move to Cleveland, as he alongside Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love would be sweeping the Houston Rockets in the finals, despite having both James Harden and a prime Dwight Howard. So with that all done, it's time to move on to 2016, which evidently would have more to talk about. Because no longer are the Golden State Warriors winning 73 games. Instead, they're finishing in 4th place in what's the most brutal iteration of the Western Conference ever. They'd eventually fall short to the LA Clippers in the second round, who have Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and their newest, most game-changing addition, Paul Pierce. In real life, he averaged 6 points during his time with the team. That's been bumped all the way up to 24, helping the Clippers make it all the way to the finals against the LeBron-less Miami Heat team, and they would eventually be sweeping. On 3 different franchises, the Truth has won 3 championships, with this one in particular being the first ever in Clippers history. However, in the case of Miami, specifically Dwayne Wade, we'll be checking right back on him shortly as we enter the 2017 season. Before we mention anyone else though, it would be a mistake to not start with the Warriors, who are adding Kevin Durant in search of their first title of the 2010s. Which now leads us into another super team, the New York Knicks. In real life, they had a decent amount of buzz only to miss the playoffs. But in this universe, they have a prime Derrick Rose joining up with a prime Carmelo Anthony, Defensive Player of the Year Joakim Noah, and a budding Porzingis in only his 3rd year. And as a result, they would have a very good season up until the second round where they'd be losing to the Chicago Bulls. Team of the East would be led by Jimmy Butler, prime Rondo, and hometown hero Dwayne Wade. And Chicago would eventually be making it to the finals to challenge the defending champs shortly after. However, while they have Chris Paul and Blake, Paul Pierce's sudden boost has even more weight than last season, as in real life his scoring continued to go down all the way to 3 points per game. So with him back in prime form and those previously mentioned All-Stars, a 3-2 lead for Los Angeles should come at no surprise. But there's a huge reason why the Bulls even made it this far, and it's one of the best finals MVPs ever. All Chicago needs is a chance, and thanks to Dwayne Wade, they would have that opportunity, holding on to a 1-point lead with 1:43 remaining. The Clippers trying to end this one on their home court, the Bulls trying to force Game 7 and send it back to Chicago. Wade all the way with the dunk. 2006 21 or 22-year-old D Wade with the slam. 3-point lead for Chicago. Chris Paul driving left into Robin Lopez. It's blocked by Lopez. Picked up by Rondo. Over to Wade. He's going to slow it down. He's guarded by JJ Redick, not known as a defender. He's driving right. Pull up. 15-footer is good. 2 straight buckets from Wade. Chris Paul is going to walk it up with 1:10 left. Looks like they're running a play for Pierce. No, they clear out for Paul. He's going to drive. The floater is in, keeping LA in it with 1:03 remaining. Wade with 2 straight buckets down the stretch. Will he make a third? 57 seconds. Still guarded by Redick. He's going to drive left at the elbow. Good defense through a crowd. Rebounded by Griffin. 47 seconds. Prime Paul Pierce trailing the play. They get it over to Chris Paul at his spot. Now guarded by Taj Gibson on the switch, gets the screen, wide open mid-range. He misses it, rebounded by Jordan, the putback is in. 33.5 left. LA does not have to foul, but it's 2K, so you never know. They can play for a stop. JJ Redick pressing full court, makes him give it up. The give and go. Wade's gonna back it out with 20 seconds left, 9 seconds on the shot clock, driving left. It's blocked by Pierce, picked up by Rondo. He hits the shot. A huge defensive play. Paul Pierce, not known for defense, gets the block, but it lands right in the hands of Rondo. 13.9 left. Will they find Pierce for it? It looks like they're running a play for Paul. It's stolen by Rondo. LA has to foul one more time. That very well might have done it. And with a couple of insurance free throws from the Flash, this one would be heading back to Chicago where a champion would soon be crowned. And evidently those huge plays down the stretch of Game 6 would be very important in the context of 7, as Chicago would complete the 3-2 comeback and win this year's title. Wade will forever be known as a hometown hero, and Rondo will be remembered as a playoff legend for life. But now it's time to move on to 2018. With it, another team in the East would be stealing the Finals MVP, as Dwayne Wade would be heading to Cleveland to join up with not just LeBron James, but Derrick Rose as well, making one of, if not, the most dangerous Big Three of all time. However, while the Cavs would be on historic pace halfway through the season, unfortunately for them, rosters are remaining accurate. So halfway through the year, Dwayne Wade would be returning to Miami and D-Rose would be heading to Minnesota, effectively shutting Cleveland's title window. The Toronto Raptors would be making it to the finals to represent the East instead in somewhat of a Cinderella run. However, in terms of a championship, the shoe would not fit. They would be facing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are stacked, led by MVP Westbrook, Paul George, and maybe the most impactful change of the season, a rejuvenated Carmelo Anthony. And as a result, OKC would be winning this year's title easily. Perhaps if the Cavs stay together, we'd see a more competitive finals, but in some way the roster staying accurate can be somewhat of a curse. That really depends on who you ask though. To certain franchises, it may be a blessing instead, as in 2019, the already stacked Golden State Warriors would be adding a prime DeMarcus Cousins, giving them a whopping total of 6 players ranging from all-stars to legends running the team. The only surprise we would see in this season would be the Atlanta Hawks making the finals off the strength of a prime Vince Carter teaming up with Trae Young. But as far as the final result, the champion is obvious. The Golden State Warriors core have just won their first titles, and they might be set up for even more going forward considering everyone's staying in prime form. But that's a league-wide phenomenon. They wouldn't be the only ones benefiting from such. The 2020 season would see the LA Lakers return to the finals in the bubble, now even better thanks to improvements in their starting lineup. So with LeBron and AD still here leading the way, despite a different opponent, we would see the same result as in real life. The Lakers would be winning the title, and now it's time to enter 2021. Brooklyn now has a big three of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, but they're also adding the talents of several stars from the 2010s, including NBA champion Blake Griffin. So just like the Warriors back in 2019, they have an entire starting five built with players who are at bare minimum an all-star. A championship with this squad was basically guaranteed the whole time, and the Nets have their second of the simulation. But here's where it gets slightly complicated. The 2022 season, while we've mostly been focusing on teams as a whole, we'd be seeing the redemption of sorts for one of the league's most ridiculed players. MVP Russell Westbrook is back, running the point for a Lakers starting five that's one of the greatest ever, as they would shatter the all-time wins record to make it to the finals against Philly, where, as it's been for multiple years now, the favorite would be in control. LA is up 3-1, LeBron hits the free throw, extends it to 7, and the second free throw to seal it is good. Harden's gonna walk it up the court, but this one is over. The LA Lakers, the 2022 champions. And without a shadow of a doubt, this is the greatest team in NBA history. A Hall of Fame starting five was as good as advertised, and they've won the ultimate prize when in real life they missed the playoffs. But for one of these stars in particular, he would be on his way to becoming the king of LA. For 2023, Russell Westbrook's heading over to the Clippers, and he's still surrounded by plenty of Hall of Famers, and they would be returning to the finals. So now it's just a matter of who they're going to play. And among the great teams out east, two in particular would be sharing the spotlight. On one end would be the #1 seeded New York Knicks, led by MVP Derrick Rose and Jalen Brunson. A duo so good that they would be going up 3-2 on the Boston Celtics, who have prime Blake Griffin and Jason Tatum, who just so would happen to have the ball in his hands with the Celtics season on the line. Boston clears out the entire left side of the floor for him. He's gonna drive into the paint. The layup is good for the lead. 7 seconds left. If Boston can get one more stop, we're going to game 7 with 7 seconds on the shot clock. The MVP, Derrick Rose, 3 seconds left. Into the paint, the floater. And we would be going back to New York for game 7. One of these two teams will eventually head over to the finals to challenge the Clippers. And if the Celtics can potentially pull off an upset, they'll be in conversations for the favorite to win it all. However, that's easier said than done, because after a crucial mistake by one of Boston's best defenders, Randall's gonna set a screen for Rose, He's gonna take the 3 and get fouled by White. Eventually, Jason Tatum and Blake Griffin would only be side characters in the story of Derrick Rose. Boston hasn't won a title since Shaq was leading the team, and that unfortunate streak would ultimately continue as New York would eventually make it to the finals. But unfortunately for the state of New York, both D. Rose and Jalen Brunson would also be side characters. One's in the redemption story of Russell Westbrook. He's gone back-to-back on 2 different Los Angeles teams, and in recent history, nobody has benefited more from staying in their prime. But while the road to the 2023 championship was a complicated one, 2024 would be simple in comparison. The Giannis and Damian Lillard duo has mostly been a disappointment in real life, but in this universe, the trade has worked out to perfection. because the two would be heading all the way to the finals and they would eventually win, taking down a Timberwolves team that, to their credit, is set up to do some major damage in the West. But for 2025, there would be a squad ready to do more. The most ridiculed franchise in the NBA, one that's seemingly in the middle of multiple conspiracies, and one that in this universe would be seen as one of the best. The number 2 record in the entire league would be held by the Dallas Mavericks, led by their restored big three of prime Kyrie, AD, and Klay Thompson. And this devastating trio would be on the fast track to the NBA Finals, advancing past the first round easily just to lose to Golden State in the second. What seemed like a promising redemption story is ending at the hands of Steph Curry, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler. And these three would carry that momentum onto the conference finals, where they would be preventing a Russell Westbrook three-peat, sending home the Denver Nuggets to move on to the NBA Finals against the Indiana Pacers, who interestingly don't really have anyone who's been boosted on the roster. So as a result, this young and upcoming team would be falling short at the hands of 3 future Hall of Famers, leading to our second Golden State championship of the last 15 years. As a whole, NBA history has changed a ton. Celtics Shaq, Nets KG, Lakers Westbrook, and more all had redemption stories. But what would happen if only LeBron James was reverted to his prime? How many titles could he and Luka run up going forward? What does the future of the NBA look like? Click the video on the screen to find out.